Welcome back. Today I thought I would take you through my workflow from front to back using one of my own images and to show you the workflow in action. The image that I'm going to use today is of a fellow headshot crew member, Neetan, who visited my studio back in May of 2019. Before we get into that, though, I just want a quick reminder, this is the workflow. I'll put a link into the description that talks about the workflow in more detail. And all right, let's get at it. So here we are in Capture One. This is the raw file that I captured of Neetan. You can see my file naming structure: first name, last name, day, month, year of the shoot, and then the shutter counter. And that gives me a unique identifier for every image that I've shot. You can also see that there's no edits being done. This is straight out of camera. This is the crop I shot it in. I used one light. This is the 1x3 from the original Flex kit on an Arctic white background. And there was nothing else going on in the studio. That was the only light. Okay, so let's get at it. I shot this with the D750. You can see my settings down here. And Nikon, the generic ICC profile, has a lot of red overtones that are, any Nikon shooter knows that. So what I usually do is I use the camera RGB profile and use a film standard. And that does two things. It takes the red out a lot, but it also desaturates and darkens. So now we're just going to offset the saturation loss. It's typically 10 to 15. Yeah, let's do 10 right now. And in terms of exposure, I'm not using the full histogram here, so let's auto-correct that right off the bat. That looks better. I got my exposure warning on, so I can know how far to push it. The shadows are a bit dark for me, so I might just bring those up a bit. Yeah, that's cool. Brightness, let's see how far I can push before I start hitting. You can see I'm starting to see some overexposure here. So I'm pretty close to the threshold. I want to be just under any exposure warning. I know I'm getting some in the eye. That's okay. It's the skin. I don't want to get anything too hot. Not bad. I can see there's still some red. I can see this three different ways. My eye just tells me it's red. I can see the histogram, that the red curve. This is the gray background. You can see the red is pushed, and you can also see on the numbers at the top, the RGB values, you can see the red is slightly higher. So how I fix that, I don't use the white balance. It's just, I've tried, it just doesn't work for me. I use the red and I push the midtones up. So let's, and that takes care of the histogram. And you can now see, if I'm looking back up here again, you can see I've pulled out most of the red. There's still some reds that are evident in the shadows where the saturation's a bit heavier, but that's pretty close. All right. The only thing I'm seeing that I might fix here before I take it across to Affinity is the light is not bad. I would have had a little bit more light here. I'm finding the shadow on this eye just too much of a difference. I want to bring that up. So I'm going to do that here. I don't mind doing a quick dodge and burn. So what I do is create a new layer, exposure, put it at 1. I always go too far, and then I can always bring it back. And my brush settings are auto brush flow at about 5, hardness at 0. So if I just do a reasonable zoom, there you go, brush it in. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to do just a little bit of painting. All right, I think that's not bad. So if I select that layer and then hit the M key, I'll show you where the mask is. And you see it's not that much. It's very little flow. I can zoom out again and just toggle that on and off. If I take the exposure warning off, it won't be as distracting. And I've just added just a bit more to balance it out. I might have gone too far. Let's change the opacity. Let's take it down to 80%. And that's looking a bit better. All right, let's just do one more check before I take it across. I just want to see on the background layer how far I can push exposure before I start burning the skin off. Right there, you can just see I'm getting some red dots here, and I'm about 1/10 of a stop. So I'm slightly underexposed. I can probably bring it up just a bit. That'll make sure. If I readjust this, so I'm good for that. Right, so this is the corrections I would do on the raw file. Why don't I just do a quick clone the variant, and then on this one, reset it. So you can see that's the straight out of camera, and this is now, I'll just toggle between the two of them, the version that I will take into Affinity Photo. Right, so straight up, edit with Affinity Photo. And this is my settings, PSD. Some people use TIFF. I find it way too big and unnecessary. 16-bit full profile, that's the same profile I shoot it in. I don't go to sRGB or screen RGB until I do the processing. 300 pics, 100%, edit variant. And it should now throw it over to Affinity. And here we are. All right, so first thing I do in Affinity is what I call my no regret fixes. I gotta take this light out. I usually use the in-painting brush, opacity flow 100%. Now I'm using a Wacom tablet, so I adjust my brush sizes on the go. So if I hit Control Option on the keyboard, I can change both the size and the hardness of the brush by just dragging the brush across the Wacom. So left, right gives me big or small, top, bottom gives me hard or soft. So if you see me adjusting my brushes on the fly, that's how I'm doing it. All right, so get a relatively hard brush and just paint it in. And let's see how that works. Sometimes it misses, you gotta do it a couple of times. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm still in the background layer. I haven't duplicated it. I'm not one of these fellows that makes 73 layers in a workflow. If I can do it on the layer, then that's what I'll do. The hair is looking good. He's got more than me, and everything else looks pretty good. I'm going to stay on the in-paint tool, and all I do now is just scour the image looking for things that stick out that I would want to fix. There's that hair there I might want to fix. So I'm zooming. I got a trackpad, so I zoom on my trackpad with one hand as I've got my Wacom tablet and brush. That didn't do a good fix on the other. So I can move around relatively quickly. And again, there's no need to sample that automatically samples. Now, what I might do, because some of the skin imperfections are there, I'm going to add an adjustment layer that I use to help me see skin tones a bit better. I've got a macro on it. I'll just push the macro and I'll show you what it is. All it is, it's a black and white layer with the reds dragged down. That's it. I just have a macro that I built so it's easier. Go back on the background layer. And what this allows me to do, go back to my... is for some of these skim imperfections, I just, it's a judgment call whether they stay or not. I don't mind guys having a little bit more ruggedness, but some show age a bit better. Boy, I'm roasting this guy here. He doesn't even know I'm doing his image yet. I might take that one out just a little bit. So I'm just going through the image, picking out things that catch my eye that I know are not going to cause me problems. I don't need a duplicate layer to do this. We're good for the nose hair, dude. That's good. Right, there's one there. I'm going to take that off. That's on the background. Let's just go around the head, make sure there's no other hairs. that are causing us concerns. I'm looking at basically the profile of the image. All right, as I'm seeing it, this. So yeah, there's no real method to my madness. As long as I cover the whole image, I don't care how I get there. Some of these whites are. I have in my head. I want to do get some of these hairs out of the way. That one. I have in my mind. I might want to put this in a high contrast black and white. So anything that would catch some of the whites, like those white flecks that have been taken out, would be a distraction. I might do that in frequency separation, that spot there. Take out that bend. Yeah. We'll leave that hair. Yeah, in judgment call. Every time I do this image, this must have been, when I was fighting my color, I must have been doing my portfolio 4 or 5 times. Each time I would edit an image, it would be different in terms of the things I would fix and the things I would take out. So I want to leave enough of them to catch his character, but I don't want to overwhelm the viewer with too much detail, or I should say too much imperfection. I'm going to leave that. I'll take that out with frequency separation. All right, so I'll take that out, that little highlight. There's a little bump he's catching on the side of the nose. We'll take that out. I'll take this one out here over here. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's take off my adjustment layer. Yeah, that's not bad. So I just leave it there. I leave it off. All right, so the next thing I would typically do would be to create a mask. So I know I'm going to use a mask. I want to darken this side of the face a little bit when I do dodge and burn. And I also want to maybe take out the residual reds that's in the background. So I know I'm going to need a mask. Let's grab the selection tool, snap to edges, make sure that's on. Again, adjust my brush size. And let's grab this guy. So all I'm doing is dragging the brush pretty coarse, and then I go in tight and fix. That's fine. It doesn't need to be exact. It just needs to be close enough. All right. Take that out. The hair is good. There's a little bit of red there. Interesting. I'll take that out later. Come on. Yeah, we're looking pretty good. All the way down the bottom. Good. Refine. And this is where I look to see, did I catch the right edge? Was I close enough? Yeah, I was. And the hair, I might fix this a little bit. Yeah, that's cool. All right, so output then as a mask. Apply it. It'll generate a mask. I'll take it off for now. All right, so I have a mask. I'm going to need it later. I just do it now because before my layer stack gets too heavy. All right, so let's do a frequency separation layer. Again, I have a macro for it. I guess I can show you the manual way. The manual way is just to duplicate it, filter, frequency separation. You're going to get a choice. You can see my 2 choices, 5 or 10 picks. I typically go 5 and apply. It'll take that background duplicate layer that I just made and split it into 2. A low frequency. If I just show you that, there it is. And it's just got a Gaussian blur of 5 picks on it. That's all that layer is. And then there's an offsetting high frequency overlay, and you can just see that here. Together, they replicate the original base image. All right, so picking the low frequency, I typically use a heel brush, pretty aggressive flow. And let's fix out some of these bumps. So so with heel, I grab it close, and all I want to do is take off that shadow. The textures are unaffected. I'm just taking off the impact of some of those characteristic bumps that he's got. Might take a little bit of this red out, a spot of red. I might just tone. I'm going to change the opacity. The opacity, if I just hit 35, it's going to go to 35% straight off the bat. So I don't need to go up there and do anything. I just might take some of these spots down just a little bit. And again, I'm sampling close, so I get a similar color. In this case, I'm choosing a lighter color just to offset some of those bumps or the age spots. Here, I might take that one out just a little bit. I might take this one out. Yeah, I noticed he's got this vein in the eye that's bothering me a little bit. So in this case, since I'll just take both layers. So I'm now affecting both layers. Take my in-painting brush. Oops, undo that. And just take it out. Might take out some of those highlights. That's better. All right, back to the low frequency. Back to the heel brush. And let's take out, just lower some of that mark there. Let's up the opacity. I'm now at 65%. Again, I just typed it into the keyboard. It keeps me fast and nimble. Take that one out a bit. Go back to 45. All right. There's a little bit of red there that I might just take out. I'm just going to go down to 15% now on the opacity. I find opacity works better for me. Some people like flow. The difference really is whether your habit is to lift the brush between strokes off the pad or not. If you use flow, you can go back and forth a number of times. It's just going to build it up slowly. If you use opacity, you got to lift the brush to restart the, if you will, the counter and start adding more. I use opacity as a result just because it's easier for me. All right, there's a little bit here. Again, for guys, I typically don't go too perfect. Everybody needs a bit of help, but for guys, they tend to like a more gritty image. All right, so that looks good. I might now just darken the camera left side just a bit. So between low and frequency, again, I've got a curves macro that I use. I'm just going to, as long as the low frequency is selected, it's going to build above it. I hit it and I'll show you what it generates. Didn't do it. Let's do it there. Okay, so it creates a dodge and a burn layer, darken and lighten, because sometimes I get confused. And all they are is a curve layer where I've dragged the midpoint down, and it's blend mode luminosity. And I limit, this is a limiter because at 100%, this is the most I'm going to be able to do. I can't, I can paint there for hours. It's going to take me to the edge of this limit and that's it. And I find that's helpful. So if I need more, I can either add another layer or I can drag this and be a little bit more careful. Right, so that macro, all it did is put a darken curve and a lighten curve. Lighten is the same, push the other way, luminosity, that's it. And then I've inverted them. So they come up with nothing showing. And as a result, if I go darken, I can now paint with 100% opacity, low flow, about 1%, pretty low hardness. And as long as I use, looking up here, a white brush, let's just show you with the flow. If I use, so all I'm doing is I'm using a keyboard. I hit Control and then a number. It's going to change my flow number. And you can see if I change my brush, I'm going to get pretty dark, and I'm not painting on that. And that's way too much. So if I hit flow, So again, Control 01. And relatively soft brush. And I just want to add a little bit. And I know I'm painting over the edge of his skin. In addition, no, I didn't like that. Let's start over. Yeah, let's go there. So I reset my history where I started painting, so I know I haven't got any paint. And I'm just going to soften my brush a bit. So I know the actual part of the brush is painting over the background. That doesn't bother me because I have a mask, and I'm going to use that mask shortly. All right, so I'm going to take that mask. I'm going to duplicate it because I'm going to need it later. I'm going to drop it on that darken curve. And as a result, oh, it's not showing. All right, let's just activate that mask. Anything that I darkened outside of the mask is not going to show. So since the mask is him, anything that I painted on the background is now masked out. And let's just see. So I've just darkened it just a little bit. You can see that toggling on and off. All right, on the lighten, again with the brush, paintbrush using white, very low flow. I might just add just a little bit of touch on the colored bits of the eye. That's looking pretty good. I might add just a little bit up the bridge of the nose. I might add just a little bit. That's too much. Take that away. Again, I only tend to add a little bit where there's already light. I'm not trying to change the light. And then in this case, because I did the nose line, I just want to blur that a little bit. Back to my library, I might do a 2.5 pix blur. Again, I'm just doing a 2.5 pixel standard Gaussian blur, and I'm just applying it to my lighten curve or my lighten layer. And you can see very little effect, but there's enough. You can see the eyes, you can see the just along the ridgeline of his nose. I'm just adding a bit of pop. There you go. I like that. All right, now let's take care of this background. Take any residual red out of it. It's still between my low and high frequency layer. Let's add a HSL layer. Let's go to the reds and just pull the saturation right down. Now, I'm catching him as well because it's applying to the whole image. Take my mask again that I made before. Let's activate it. Let's bring it down to the HSL layer so it grabs it. And then while the mask is selected, Command-I, invert, and it's now only applied to the background. So I've inverted the mask from what I made, and I now have absolutely no red in the background. And we're getting really close to being done. On the high frequency layer, let's add my secret sauce of my 25% LUT. And that's a recipe I've used and developed. So you see the background's just gone a little bit blue, which I don't mind because he's got a blue shirt on. And you can see if I toggle this on and off, I've just taken any residual amount of red in his skin. I've now just notched it down just a little bit more. And that is pretty much what I would do on this image. File, save. Let's go to the desktop and this guest retouch, right? Save. So I'm saving the affinity file directly so I can preserve my layers in case I have to go back. And then I export. And I'll export PSD bilinear, the whole document. Export it to the file, to the capture file. Where is it? Guest retouch to the capture file. I will save it. It'll ask me overwrite the old one. Absolutely, I want to do that. No sense in having too many files. So I'm now overwriting in the capture one capture folder the PSD output of this file from Affinity Photo. And once the export is finished, we'll switch back to capture one, and you'll see capture one will automatically pick it up. So if I cycle over now, there's the PSD file, and we'll just wait. You'll see a a round circle. There it is. And there's the new file. So the PSD has come across fine. I've got a little bit more highlight on the nose, which is where I added that little bit of dodge, just because that's where I want the eye to draw. The eye is drawn to the brightest parts, and I didn't want it to compete. I didn't want the forehead to stand out. So if I turn my exposure warnings off, there, that's the finished image. So to recap, that's straight out of camera. That's what we did in Capture One, and then that's what we did in Affinity Photo. So from there to there is the nature of the retouch. Okay, let's now make some variants here. Clone the variant. Let's add a crop. Let's do a 4x5, and I'm going to put it on, this side. Looks pretty cool, since I don't have the other shoulder. And I might take this down just a bit. So I got too much of his head. Right. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. And that would be the standard 4x5 headshot crew crop. Let's do another clone, and let's turn this sucker into black and white. Let's follow my standard recipe. Saturation down to 0, midtones to minus 0.2. Let's do a quick adjustment on the wizard for the black point. Slide the white point back up to where it was. Add some contrast with the Luma curve. Add just a little bit of grit with the clarity. And then let's recover some of the shadows. Yeah, let's bring it up. I don't want to go too much. I want to keep this relatively dark. That's part of the image. I know we could have put a kick there. I just didn't want to. And we were also just playing with one light at the time. Yeah, bring the black point up just a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. Now comes the art of the white point. Let's start with white balance. And let's put the exposure warning on. And let's crank that puppy. Yeah, that's not bad. I'll keep it there. I might just bring the highlights up just a little bit more. And yeah, I'm liking that. That looks pretty good. Let's do a quick compare. Let's clone this variant again and drag it over and just do a quick desat and compare. That's a standard grayscale you'd get and the pop of the black and white. I just find that's awesome. All right, let's get rid of that. And now we're ready to output. So we're going to choose these two. Go to my outputs. I have two recipes I use, print and web. Print is standard Adobe RGB, 300 pics. I find 90% JPEG is good enough. I can't tell the difference between 90 and 100, and the difference in file size though is considerable. And then my standard web recipe, I put it in the screen RGB, 96 pics an inch and 2048 long edge. Right, so if I pick these two images, I pick those two recipes, shift, process, and I'll drop these in the crew as well. And there you have it. You've seen this image go from straight out of camera to the image that I would deliver to the client. Hope you enjoyed that, and have a great day. Cheers.